After a great preseason performance, has Jalen Sundell played his way back into the starting lineup for the Seattle Seahawks? Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Still got plenty of stuff to talk about from that Friday night dominant victory, preseason victory, but nevertheless victory over the Kansas City Chiefs by the Seattle Seahawks. And of all the things that people are pumped about after the way that game went, I think the offensive line is probably the biggest one. Maybe Kubiak, maybe the way in which the offensive game plan was implemented, maybe the way in which the game was called. But other than that, the offensive line gave people a lot of reason to be excited. And I want to talk a little bit about one element of that offensive line. Because we got this article on screen here from Pro Football Rumors. Seahawks moving closer to naming O-line starters. This was posted yesterday afternoon. And honestly, at this point, I don't think there's a lot of mystery with 4 of the 5 starters. You've got Charles Cross and Abe Lucas at tackle. Those guys are your starters. There's no drama there. You've got Gray Zabel and now Anthony Bradford at guard. I don't think there's much drama there anymore. Maybe there was some with Bradford, but after the game Bradford just played, combined with the fact that he looks so much better than anybody else, supposedly, in training camp so far, I don't think there's much left to say. He's clearly the guy. Now, maybe that doesn't mean he's great, but it does mean he's the best that we can do right now. That leaves one position. It's center. And I want to talk a little bit about center because that's the one position where things could still be less than clear. Now, this one has gone back and forth for a little while now because going into camp, the assumption, at least my assumption was, oh, they're going to give it to Oluwatimi. It can't be anybody else. And then it seemed like they really liked Jalen Sundell, and he was getting a lot of reps in camp. And it seemed like there was some push on the part of the team to have him be the guy. And then Oluwatimi supposedly was looking way better than Sundell, and it swung back the other way. But now here we are, and I think we got to talk about this. So we're going to do that in this video. Please like if you haven't already, subscribe if you're new, click the bell for notifications, become a channel member for $2 a month. So let's take a look at a couple of things here. First of all, Jalen Sundell's play. And I don't want to make too big a deal out of one preseason game. I don't. I'm not going to sit here and say that anybody should make a big deal out of one preseason game. But Jalen Sundell's performance against the Chiefs across 31 snaps, not 10, not 15, but 31, was very good. Maybe even great, maybe even elite. I watched that game live, and I thought he looked really good. Everybody who has been speaking about that game since it ended has said that they thought he looked really good. Pro Football Focus has thought he looked really good. There's consensus here that he looked very special for 31 snaps. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? Because the previous week against the Raiders, I don't think Sundell was nearly as good. And you can see the Pro Football Focus grade is much more harsh. He picked up a penalty. His run blocking grade was really rough. But the pass blocking grade actually stayed at a very high level. It was actually a little bit higher than it was against the Chiefs. So it's not a complete washout there either. It's not like he did nothing good against the Raiders. Now, does this mean that he's going to beat out Oluwatimi? Because that's the other side of this. You have the Jalen Sundell side, and then you have the Oluwatimi side. Oluwatimi is not here. Well, he's here, but he's not on the field right now. This is the most crucial time of the preseason. This is the most crucial moment for a guy in a competition for the starting job, and he's not practicing. He's not playing. He got hurt at a very unfortunate time. I don't know if we're having this conversation if he doesn't get hurt, but he did get hurt. And now I'm wondering, now I'm not so sure. Can a guy lose his starting job because of an injury? Did Oluwatimi ever really have the starting job on lock to begin with? It's hard to know these things, but after what happened on Friday night, people are wondering. And look, Jalen Sundell, last year he was a rookie. I'm not really going to look too deep into anything that he did last year because he didn't play enough and he was an undrafted rookie anyway. But, I mean, it does seem like things are kind of going in a certain direction with Jalen Sundell where this team thinks they have something here. And remember, let's not forget, Sundell and Gray Zabel played on the same offensive line in college. There may be a connection there. That might be something this team is trying to tap into by having both those guys on the field next to each other on the same offensive line. Now, I believe that most Seahawks fans, and if I'm wrong, comment down below, if the team is seeing one thing across hundreds and hundreds of reps in practice and camp, and then they're seeing another thing over a few dozen snaps in preseason games, they should trust what they see in camp. They should trust what they see across the bigger sample size. So maybe they're not thinking along these lines. Maybe the only question for them is, will Oluwatimi be healthy in time to play? Because they've already decided he's the starter, and what Sundell is doing right now is great for him as a backup, and it's instilling confidence that if he has to play at some point, he can. But maybe they're not putting too much stock into one preseason game. And I think that most Seahawks fans would agree that if you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of snaps from camp versus a few dozen snaps in preseason, you should be weighing the camp stuff heavier because it's just a much bigger set of data. But there is another thing going on here, and this is something that I've alluded to before. I know Hawk's Nest has alluded to this as well. There's a difference in the ceiling and potential for a guy like Jalen Sundell versus Oluwatimi. I've said many times that I think Oluwatimi has a lower ceiling, and sometimes people don't like that. Sometimes people seem a little confused why I say that. There are a couple different reasons, but this is the big one right here. And what we have here, I did it in a document because I couldn't find any websites that hosted this in a very convenient way to view it. This is the list of physical attributes for both players. Sundell is on the left. Oluwatimi is on the right. These are physical attributes, to be clear. Nothing to do with what they do, what they exactly have done so far on the football field. Nothing to do with their stats. Nothing to do with like PFF grading. These are raw, objective data points collected from their combines and from their pro days. In the case of Oluwatimi, it's a couple years old. Sundell is like, what would it be? A little more, less than a year and a half old. Maybe right around a year and a half old. But most of this stuff would not have radically changed in that time. And let's look here. I don't want to go over every single number bit by bit, but let's take a look at some crucial ones, okay? So, Jalen Sundell, above average 40 time, above average 10-yard split, well above average, maybe even downright really good 20-yard split, above average 20-yard shuttle, above average 3-cone, well above average vertical, good vertical, above average broad jump. Okay? These are metrics that teams use to try to get an idea of how athletic and potentially, I don't want to say, how potentially good a player can be, because that's just one element of many. But in the modern NFL, where teams are all about getting offensive linemen that can play on the move, offensive linemen that can play in space. These are the things that teams look at. And again, every number above average to great. And that's Sundell. Oluwatimi, very slow 40 time, 5.38. Sundell significantly faster. 10-yard split, it's not even close. 10-yard split, his 10-yard split is just bad, like really bad. 20-yard split is below average. 20-yard shuttle is about average. His 3-cone's good. His 3-cone is actually the one metric here that really stands out in terms of his actual speed. Now, his explosive scores are a little more manageable. His vert is slightly above average. His broad is actually elite, for whatever that's worth. But these numbers paint a pretty clear picture. Jalen Sundell is the guy who can be an upper-level athlete for the position. And by the way, if anybody is wondering, I got these percentiles by looking at the mean and standard deviation of the numbers on Mock Draftable, and then calculating where these numbers would fall on the distribution. So if these numbers are off, it's because the mean and standard deviation posted on Mock Draftable is wrong. So if these percentiles are wrong, then so be it. But you can still compare apples to apples and say, okay, Jalen Sundell's a lot taller than Oluwatimi. Sundell is a little bit lighter than Oluwatimi, 8 pounds. He's got slightly longer arms. He's got much bigger hands. He's faster on every layer. His 10-yard split, 20-yard split, and 40-yard dash, significantly faster on all fronts. 20-yard shuttle, better. 3-cone, Oluwatimi's a little bit better, but it's very, very slight. They're very, very similar. We're talking about 0.5 hundredths of a second. Slightly better broad for Sundell, and a slightly better better vert for Sundell, and better broad for Oluwatimi. My bad. Sorry, I got a little scramble there. And Oluwatimi also wins the bench press battle. So the reason why I bring this up, Oluwatimi is probably, well, maybe we can't even say that now, but Oluwatimi is possibly a better player than Sundell right now. He's got experience. He played better in college. Remember, he was a great college center. And while he's not a great athlete, he has experience playing zone in college. He played a lot of zone in college. But there are always going to be limitations there because he's not a very good athlete. He's reasonably explosive. He's got some explosion in his hips. And that's great. But there's not a lot of overall actual athletic ability to get up and go, to get out of his stance and just peel up to the second or third level, or loop around, or really play outside of the starting point of the play. And you're seeing that way more with Jalen Sundell. Like you look at this, it's pretty significant how much better it is. And maybe that is also a big factor here. They look at Sundell and think he has the potential to be an upper-level center in this league, and Oluwatimi does not. I don't think Oluwatimi will ever be a top 15 center in this league, even in the best-case scenario. This is an older player at this point. This is his third year in the league, but he was old coming into the NFL. He's already kind of in his prime, and I don't think he's ever going to be a top half of the starters in the league center. Sundell, there's a lower floor. Like, Sundell could just be really bad, I guess, but maybe we're starting to learn that he's not. I don't know. Look at it. Look at this. Maybe. It's just a preseason, but it's still football. But maybe Sundell is the guy they're looking at and going, this guy could be a top 10 center. Maybe we have to fight through a year or so of rough patches and hard times, but he'll get there. And Oluwatimi won't. Oluwatimi has a nice floor. He's clearly a top 30 center, probably a top 25 center. But there's going to be a ceiling that he hits. Sundell, with these athletic scores, I'm not seeing the same ceiling. And I know that he didn't have a lot of draft pedigree, but Jason Kelce was a 6th-round pick. A lot of these centers were not super highly drafted. Decent chunk of these centers were not super highly taken. So that's really about all I can say about this one. It's very interesting. Do they want to have a player lose their job because of an injury? There are certainly teams out there, coaches out there, football teams just in general out there who would say that you should never make a player lose their job because of injury. You should always give the starting job back to the player once they get healthy, and they should lose it by play if they're going to lose it. But maybe Olu never had it. Maybe Olu was never actually the starter, and maybe Jalen Sundell is actually making a push here. Maybe he'll be the starter day one, and maybe that'll be for the better. Maybe we can get away with having a player that needs to learn on the job a little bit, like Jalen Sundell. And maybe there's upside here to where he's going to be one of the better centers in football by the end of the year or next year. Again, there is a clear difference in these two players. Sundell brings way more athleticism to the table. He's a much better athlete. Oluwatimi, I suspect he's better right now. But maybe more important is trying to figure out who's going to be better over the next 8 to 10 years. Let me know what you guys think about this one. Very interesting stuff that we're thinking about here. See you guys. Go Hawks. Video went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but this is interesting. This is tough. And this is really the only decision left to be made on the offensive line. Bradford, I gotta believe he's iced in. This is it. More videos coming later. Go Hawks. See you guys soon.